Hello, divers. I'm Tom Feeney, podcaster and purveyor of pop culture propaganda, searching beneath the surface of what seems to be the ordinary, the mundane, the pedestrian. In other words, mysteries of the deep. This time, we dive into a situation that no filmmaker or movie studio wishes to find themselves in. A project that, for whatever reason, was never completed. Many films die during the planning stages. It's a common enough occurrence. But even the biggest and most powerful movie studios, backed by billions of dollars and access to the top creatives, can find themselves abandoning a project they once championed. It has to be a frustrating position to find yourself in. Time, money, and resources wasted in pre-production. There's scripts, storyboards, costume design, there's booking sound stages, casting talent, and in some cases, even beginning the shooting process. That can all have taken place when the plug is pulled. And it happens more often than you might think, and for many, many different reasons. Everything from legal entanglements, technical issues, and the dreaded artistic differences can derail a film. There are projects that have spent years floating around Hollywood like a low-hanging cloud, waiting for the green light to move forward. There's even an industry term for these, development hell, but that deserves an episode on its own. There are motion pictures, however, that have overcome the many hurdles it takes to begin production, only to be unceremoniously canceled. It feels like one of those news stories where unwitting employees show up to their workplace only to find a sign on the door that says, "We are closed permanently." Now, these kind of abandoned projects can ruin reputations, damage professional relationships, and even bankrupt companies. Let's examine a few. The first example has to be, without a doubt, one of the dumbest ideas for a motion picture in history. Picture this. It's World War II, and inside a Nazi concentration camp, a disgraced circus clown is forced to lead Jewish children into the gas chamber. And the clown in question is to be played by the same person who writes and directs the movie, a slapstick comedian turned auteur. And you may already know where I'm going with this. The man is Jerry Lewis. The film is The Day the Clown Cried. The story follows Helmut Dork. No, I'm not kidding. A once celebrated German circus clown who has fallen into obscurity and alcoholism by the time World War II has begun. After drunkenly mocking Adolf Hitler at a party, Helmut is arrested and sent to a concentration camp. In a pathetic and desperate bid to regain some sense of purpose and identity, he begins performing for the children of Jewish prisoners, to entertain and distract them from the horrors they see all around. Now, the camp guards see his potential usefulness as a means of controlling and pacifying the young prisoners. Eventually, Helmut is forced to lead a group of Jewish children into the gas chambers, entertaining them with his clowning so they will walk to their deaths without any resistance. And in a final act of either guilt, redemption, or resignation, Helmut enters the gas chamber with the children rather than walk away. Sounds like a fun time for all. Now, the unfinished cut of this film has never been publicly screened, although a handful of people have seen rough cuts over the decades. One of those being comedian and former SNL cast member and Spinal Tap bass player Harry Shearer. Now, if you don't know the name, you certainly know the voice. Over the past 3 decades plus, Shearer has been voicing some of the most iconic characters on The Simpsons, including Mr. Burns, Smithers, and Ned Flanders. In an interview with Howard Stern, Shearer recounted his viewing of The Day the Clown Cried.
So, Harry, we're so excited about this. Everyone on the show has always obsessed on the fact that we want to see Jerry Lewis's movie. The story that we know is that Jerry has the movie locked up in a vault. And there's only 7 people in the world who have seen it, you being one of them. How did you take us back to how you were one of the lucky people, the lucky few?
One weekend, shortly after the telethon, sort of like around this time of year, this person called me up and said, look, I got this, it was a 3/4-inch tape. So it was a tape copy.
How lucky.
We sat in the home of this person and watched our mouths just getting, lower and lower on our faces. If you say Jerry Lewis clown in a concentration camp and you make that movie up in your head,
right,
it's so much better than that. By better, I mean worse.
Do you sit and laugh at it, or is it so?
You're stunned. You're just, oh my God,
really?
You've got to be. Oh no.
The film was shot in 1972, during a low point in Lewis's career. He was spending his days either appearing on various TV variety specials or trying to establish himself as an A-list movie director. His previous director effort was another World War II-era film, a straight-up comedy, I say that in air quotes, called Which Way to the Front. Now, here is a sampling of the humor to be found therein.
I must have the password.
Oh, well, if you must have it, that's wonderful. I'm glad you have that.
Well, please, the password.
You said you have the password. That's...
Yeah, but how do I know you have the password?
You didn't say you knew I have the password? Does password you know the password?
Yeah, but I must have the password.
Well, if you have it, then protect it. Stay with it. Don't lose it. Keep it forever.
Where is the password?
How do I know you have that password?
Oh, I have the password.
Oh, but then what do you need it again?
How do I know you have the password?
Aha!
Do I need to explain that Which Way to the Front bombed like the Luftwaffe at the Battle of the Bulge? Critics hated it, and audiences ignored it. I mean, it did make nearly $1.5 million at the box office at the time, however. In France. Since the failure of that film, no major movie studio would touch Jerry Lewis with a 10-foot boom mic. But in 1971, he was approached by a financier who wanted Lewis involved in his movie project, The Day the Clown Cried. Lewis turned it down, saying that the idea scared the hell out of him. Well, he should have listened to those instincts. Problems began almost as soon as production did. Money issues, equipment being lost or stolen, and constant changes to the script made for a contentious shoot. Jerry Lewis claimed that he had to contribute $2 million of his own money just to finish production. And control of the film rights were in dispute, and threats of lawsuits were made. As an attempt to make sure the film itself survived in some form, Lewis took a rough cut of it and kept it for himself. The film was never released. Up until his death, Jerry Lewis would become irate and combative if anyone dared bring up The Day the Clown Cried. And I was first made aware of this 20 years ago at a Jerry Lewis film festival that I helped organize. After one of the screenings, there was going to be a Q&A with Lewis himself, answering questions from members of the audience. And I worked with one of Lewis's sons in vetting the questions supplied on index cards by audience members. And I was told in no uncertain terms that no questions about The Day the Clown Cried would be allowed. And of course, there were a couple of those questions submitted. They were promptly tossed out. Oh well. Now, Lewis passed away in 2017, and at the time, the fate of the film seemed uncertain. But it wasn't until several years later when it was revealed that a portion of preprint material from the film was in the possession of the Library of Congress, with the stipulation that it remained sealed until 2024. So, now that we're in 2026, the library's Moving Image Research Center in Washington, D.C. now allows on-site access to the footage by appointment only. Now, that might have been the end of the story, if it weren't for a Swedish actor named Hans Crispin. According to Crispin, he stole, that's right, stole an allegedly complete film copy of The Day the Clown Cried from the archives of a company called Europa Film back in 1980. he transferred the film onto videotape and kept the film cans in a bank vault. Crispin has shown the print to several people, including members of the Swedish media, to prove that his claim was real. Now, sometime after that revelation, Crispin sold his print to an unknown buyer for an unknown amount of money, and it has yet to see the light of day. If you want to know more about the day the clown cried, there is a documentary called From Darkness to Light that goes into much greater detail about the film and its notorious reputation.
For me, Lewis was always ahead of his time, and there's no doubt that The Day the Clown Cried is something that was so unthinkable that we didn't even think the film existed. We thought it was made up. We thought when we were younger that it was a myth. It was so maudit, it was so forbidden. It was a myth of some kind. And that nothing of it, if it did exist, if it had happened, none of it was available to be seen by anyone, ever.
The shooting had started in Paris and in Stockholm. And I think from the start, Jerry Lewis was very happy to be involved in this project, and he thought this is going to be a great, great movie, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Everything was very, very nice. But then came this abrupt stop of it all when Jerry Lewis just left the whole shooting and went home to America, never to be seen in Sweden again. It's very hard to understand. So something is rotten in the state of Sweden, at least in this part.
As of this recording, From Darkness to Light can be seen for free on YouTube. On July 20th, 1973, a global superstar passed away unexpectedly, and an entire country went into a state of profound mourning. Tens of thousands of people lined the streets of Hong Kong for his funeral procession. A legend already at the age of 32, martial artist and actor Lee Jun-fan, better known as Bruce Lee, died of a brain edema, or excess fluid in the brain, from causes still not fully explained. Lee's legacy as a global icon cannot be understated. He was seen by the people of China as a global ambassador of genuine Chinese culture, fighting both figuratively and literally to break centuries-old stereotypes of China and its people. Even though his career was tragically short, his status as one of the greatest martial artists and a dynamic screen presence have lived on more than 50 years after his passing. What many don't know is that Lee's screen acting career began when he was only 9 years old. And by the time Lee was 18, he had already been in 20 films produced in Hong Kong. He wanted to continue his acting career after moving to San Francisco, but roles for Chinese actors were few and far between, unless perhaps you were playing an offensive stereotype. Lee was about to give up on acting when a television producer saw Lee fight at a martial arts exhibition. The producer soon had Lee audition for a supporting role in a new TV series from the people behind the campy 60s version of Batman.
Holy human collector's item!
The show was kind of a sort of a spin-off of Batman that was meant to be a more serious take on the superhero genre. The Green Hornet was based on a 1930s-era radio show about a green-garbed masked crime fighter and his driver/partner, Kato. After nailing the audition, Lee was cast. His natural charisma coupled with his martial arts skills made Lee a force to be reckoned with. Unfortunately, the show lasted only one season. Eventually, after becoming disillusioned with Hollywood, Lee returned to Hong Kong to find himself already a big star. It seems as though Lee's role as Kato became very popular in Hong Kong. Lee would have his pick of projects, so he signed on with studio Golden Harvest. His first 3 films, The Big Boss, Fist of Fury, and The Way of the Dragon, were massive worldwide box office hits, and it seemed that Lee was on the path to global superstardom. In 1972, Lee began working on his next project for Golden Harvest, a film which Lee was to have been not only the star, but also writer and director, The Game of Death.
He is an international superstar. They call him a living legend, but the woman he loves belongs to the mob. And now, they're out to own him.
Don't be a slow learner, Billy.
Billy!
If they can't buy him, they'll have to kill him.
Billy!
You don't have too many choices. A final warning.
And so begins the Game of Death. Columbia Pictures presents the immortal Bruce Lee in his greatest motion picture adventure, Game of Death. 4.5 years in production with an international all-star cast. The final film of Bruce Lee. Game of Death.
Okay, so you may be asking yourself, how can there be a trailer for an unfinished movie? Well, bear with me. We'll get to that. Bruce Lee's concept for The Game of Death was both ambitious and very personal. A martial artist trying to recover a stolen Chinese artifact must fight his way up a multi-story pagoda facing a different opponent with a distinct fighting style on each floor. Each fight was meant to illustrate Lee's own form of martial arts called Jeet Kune Do, a hybrid style incorporating multiple techniques rather than relying on a single rigid discipline. The Game of Death would be a showcase for his martial arts philosophy. Lee filmed roughly 40 minutes of footage, including some of the most celebrated fight sequences of his career. The pagoda battles featured real martial arts legends, along with another legend, basketball star Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Climbing to cruise at 42,000. We'll report again over Lincoln. Over and out.
Wait a minute. I know you. You're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. You play basketball for the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'm sorry, son, but you must have me confused with someone else. My name is Roger Murdoch. I'm the co-pilot.
Abdul-Jabbar was actually one of Lee's students at the time. The fight between Lee and the 7-foot 2-inch tall NBA star remains a highlight to this day. Ultimately, Lee set the project aside when he was offered the starring role in Warner Brothers' Enter the Dragon, the first big-budget Hollywood-made kung fu film. Now, he intended to return to Game of Death, but Lee's death left the majority of the film unfinished.
On a mysterious island in the South China Sea, there is a fortress without walls, protected by an invincible army that needs no ordinary weapons. Welcome to the island of Han, a private world of exquisite pleasures.
I have a funny feeling we're being fattened up for the kill.
And sudden death. Warner Brothers presents Enter the Dragon, the first martial arts film produced by a major Hollywood studio. American star John Saxon is Roper. He escaped the guns of the underworld.
I will find someone with whom you can fight.
There's a point I won't go beyond.
Now he must face the hands of death. Introducing U.S. karate champion Jim Kelly as Williams. He grew up in the streets and knew what it meant to fight for survival.
Your style is unorthodox. It is not the art, but the combat that you enjoy.
No winning.
and starring Black Belt Hall of Fame, undisputed martial arts champion, and international film star Bruce Lee.
What do you know about Han? He lives like a king on that island. Totally self-sufficient.
I gather you still don't have enough to bust up his operation.
We know everything. We can prove nothing. We want you to go in there as our agent.
His job is to find the secret of the island of Han and destroy it. Roper, Williams, and Lee penetrate the secret chambers of Han's evil empire, where they meet the beautiful and treacherous Tanya, Mai Ling, exotic but dangerous, Su Lin, delicate and deadly. Roper, Williams, and Lee. Just when they think they've broken the secret of the island, they find there is no escape from the inscrutable Han. Roper, he's in it for the money.
I'm hoping you'll join us, represent us in the United States.
You want me to join this?
Williams, he was there because he had no choice. And Lee, his job was to get them out, alive. This is Enter the Dragon, where the world's greatest martial arts athletes meet the ultimate challenge, the most ancient and deadly of weapons, the human body. Enter the Dragon, filmed in Panavision by Warner Brothers.
After the enormous posthumous success of Enter the Dragon, Golden Harvest decided to cash in by completing the unfinished Game of Death. That's where the trailer I just played came from. The studio wrote an entirely new plot around Lee's existing footage, then hired a Bruce Lee look-alike to stand in for him in new scenes. Now, the methods used to disguise the substitution were often jaw-droppingly sloppy. The double wore large sunglasses in many scenes, and in others his face was partially obscured. But most notoriously, the filmmakers used actual footage from Bruce Lee's funeral, including close-up shots of his face in the open casket, and incorporated it into the fictional film. They also used a cardboard cutout of Lee's face in at least one scene, literally placing a flat photo over the double's face. Now, many believe that these methods were incredibly disrespectful to Lee and his family. Now, the original pagoda footage was used at the end of the film, but it was chopped up and re-edited in ways that stripped it of much of its philosophical meaning. In fact, only 13 minutes from the original filming were used. Game of Death, released 5 years after Lee's death, was a commercial success largely on the strength of Lee's name, but critics and fans felt the final product was merely a cash grab. The roughly 40 minutes of footage Lee actually shot has been preserved and studied carefully over the decades. Back in 2001, a documentary called Bruce Lee, A Warrior's Journey reconstructed the pagoda fight sequence as Lee had filmed it, presenting it as close to what Lee originally intended as possible. Now, there have been several sequels of sorts to Game of Death. Let's see, in chronological order, there's Goodbye Bruce Lee, His Last Game of Death, Enter the Game of Death, The True Game of Death, and Game of Death 2. Guess who isn't in any of those? So if you want to watch any of the films I talked about, the 1978 version of Game of Death is available for free on Pluto TV. It's also available for rental on Apple TV and Prime Video, as is Enter the Dragon. The documentary Bruce Lee, A Warrior's Journey is on streaming service Tubi for free with ads, as are Game of Death ripoffs, The True Game of Death, and Enter the Game of Death. Game of Death 2, aka Tower of Death, if you weren't already confused, is available for free as of this recording on YouTube. Watch that at your own risk. And when you leave a motion picture unfinished, there are so many loose ends that need to be dealt with, especially when sets are built, costumes are made, locations are scouted, studios are rented, etc., etc. So there's a lot that needs to be handled, and the cost of shutting down a film can be astronomical. And you'd think those concerns would not apply to an animated production. Well, you'd be wrong. In 2009, DreamWorks Animation announced a new work in progress set to be released in 2012. It had an all-star cast featuring the voices of Seth Rogen, Melissa McCarthy, and Bill Murray. The first working title was Super Secret Ghost Project. Then it became Boo U, as in university, and finally BOO, an acronym for Bureau of Otherworldly Operations. Now, according to an official description on a proposed item of merchandise for the film would have followed ghosts Jackson Moss and Alexandra Watts, played by Rogen and McCarthy, who both joined the titular Bureau of Otherworldly Operations. Jackson joins after his life ends, saving 2 children from a giant rolling cookie. Now, the Bureau is dedicated to protecting living humans from hauntings by evil ghosts known as haunters. While working in the BOO, the pair uncover a plot from Addison Drake, played by Bill Murray. Drake is the agency's most wanted haunter and plans to destroy the Bureau with his ghost army. The 2 agents must work together and face off against the Haunter's army in order to save all of Ghostkind and humankind. Now, while the film was initially set to be released on June 5th, 2015, executives at DreamWorks decided to move the release date 7 months back to November in order to avoid competition with Pixar's Inside Out. While the film was speculated to have been pushed back to an even later 2016 release date, it was ultimately never added back into DreamWorks' release schedule. Now, while there has been no official announcement on the status of the film, the lack of information on it since 2015, along with DreamWorks removing the official website for it in late 2019, pretty much means that the film suffered the same fate as its ghostly protagonists. But why? Well, according to reports, there was nothing wrong with the script, animation design, or the acting. But rumor has it that then CEO of DreamWorks Jeffrey Katzenberg was not happy with the lack of progress on the production and ordered the film to be delayed. Now, that doesn't answer the question as to why it was shelved completely. Others say that the film went too far over budget due to constant script changes. Now, amazingly, there is a wealth of material from the film that has made its way online. Entire scenes, storyboards, character designs, and even pictures of merchandise have been leaked. Now, it's a shame when tens of millions of dollars are spent trying to create something that will entertain people for 90 minutes or so, only to be tossed away and taken as a tax write-off. I am looking at you, Warner Brothers. Batgirl. Well, at least this episode of Mysteries of the Deep is now finished. Thanks for listening. If this is the first time you've heard this podcast, check out our past episodes, available on almost all podcast providers, and subscribe so you don't miss a single one. If you like what you hear, write a review. We would love to know what you think. Drop us a line at thedeepdivepodcast@gmail.com. All clips used in this podcast are meant for educational purposes only and not to infringe on existing copyrights. Mysteries of the Deep is part of the Deep Dive Podcast family and a production of Automaton Studios.
I've seen you play. My dad's got season tickets.
I think you should go back to your seat now, Joey.
I think you're the greatest, but my dad says you don't work hard enough on defense. And he says that lots of times you don't even run down court, and that you don't really try, except during the playoffs.
The hell I don't. Listen, kid. I've been hearing that crap ever since I was at UCLA. I'm out there busting my buns every night. Tell your old man to drag Walton and Lanier up and down the court for 48 minutes.